Hey guys, it's Quay checking in. Um, Today I wanted to do something different and I wanted to read a couple passages from a particular chapter in my book Bloom. And the chapter that we're referencing today is chapter 10, Daddy Issues and Forgiveness. And this chapter in particular was one that I wanted to dive into, especially as we move into a new year, 2020, and so many of us needing to really do some releasing, some letting go, and some radical forgiveness. It's time to let go of a lot of dead weight. It's time to really lay to rest, a lot of issues that we may have been dealing with. It's time to release it. It's time to radically forgive because in not doing so, it has created, or it can create many hindrances in our lives and really hold us back from, being our absolute best selves and reaching our full potential when we constantly hold on to a lot of old pains and trauma and baggage. And so I just wanted to, dive into this chapter, and it's a couple passages that I wanted to read. Let's see. All right, so on page 46, it says, "She was no good at holding grudges. Her huge heart and forgiving spirit had a lot to do with being receptive to receiving his contributions when and wherever they should manifest. At this point, she had seen enough to understand that the cycles of abandonment were vicious and had the very real potential and likelihood of affecting one generation after the next. Because of this, she made a very cognizant decision to not let past pains and hurts be a hindrance in her efforts to live a fulfilling life, the one she felt like she most deserved. We all have a past. The question is your past still present?" She was learning to acknowledge, deal with, heal, let go, and move on. Play her part and allow everyone else to do the same without her interference. It didn't happen overnight. There were years of uncertainty, doubt, and a whirlwind of lingering questions. Years and many moments of wondering why, convinced she was not good enough, replaying over and over one of the few times some semblance of happiness was felt. It was far few and in between, but she held on to it, hoping that one day those rare moments would magnify into something greater, something consistent. I'm going to skip over a few paragraphs and go to this one where it starts with, "When she no longer saw him as the man who could not do or be who she needed him to be, it was a clear indication she was moving in a new direction. She no longer looked at him as a culmination of all the mistakes he had ever made. She understood now that he didn't love because he didn't know how to. This was no excuse and certainly no bandage used to cover old wounds. This was her understanding that this was one piece to a much larger picture. This was her understanding that there are reasons for why we do what we do and how we do the things we do. Understanding that there are pathologies passed on to us, encrypted in our DNA. That sometimes the things we do have everything and nothing to do with us." She began to see a misguided, troubled, and afraid little boy, a boy with a story of his own. In her willingness to see these things, she freed herself from the victim she had become as a result of not so good parenting. By dismantling the lies and opening her heart to understanding his suffering, this ultimately allowed her to understand her own. She forgave him. So that was just a short passage from that particular chapter, talking about letting go and forgiving. And in this particular chapter, speaking personally because I wrote this book in the third person. For some of you who may have read it, and for those of you who haven't, I wrote this book in a third person because I felt like I got to a point where I felt like I was no longer writing for myself, and I was writing for so many other women who had not yet discovered their own voice, and for so many people that could relate to these stories, who could see themselves in this story. And so for me personally, forgiving my father was probably one of the biggest acts of forgiveness that I've ever had to take on, and has been one of the most freeing experiences that I've actually ever participated in my life. And like I said in this book, for me, it was a gradual process. You know, it was a gradual process. It didn't happen overnight. I had to let go gradually. I tell people this often. I tell people that, you know, if they're dealing with something, struggling with something, trying to let go of something, I tell them, you know, let go as often as you need to. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's not as easy as just letting go and that be that. A lot of people struggle with letting go, and so I encourage people to let go as often as you need to. You know, as often as you need to, and you might have to let go over and over again of something or someone until you no longer have to. Sometimes that is the case, or, you know, let go of an idea or a belief, an idea of what you think should be, what you think should have been. Just letting go, period. Sometimes, again, it is a process. Sometimes, though, it can be a radical thing. Sometimes you can literally make the decision instantaneously and say, I'm letting go now. I'm letting go of everything right now. Like, that's radical change. And I forgive myself, and I forgive whomever, whatever act. That's radical forgiveness. Like, radical forgiveness, it literally frees you up. It frees up your vibration. And again, it frees up space internally so that you can just create space for something else, for something new, for something that looks and feels like peace. When you don't have that space holding on to things, you can feel it. It manifests itself in your body as tension, as stress, as heaviness, and letting go and forgiving radically. It's a very liberating experience. And like I said, for me personally, forgiving my father for not being the man who I thought he needed to be for me. And that came over time. Again, that came when I realized that we all have a story. And even the people who we feel like hurt us, you know, it clicked for me when I realized that he has a story as well as I do. And everyone has a story. And there are points of origin for everything. And when I realized that, that's when it really clicked for me, because it took me out of the victim role, you know, and it moved me into a different space. It opened up my heart. I became more compassionate and more open to understanding, and in understanding the struggles and the story of the person who I felt wounded me, it allowed me ultimately to better understand myself. And when that happened, it was just like, whoa. It was like having some of the final puzzle pieces to, you know, to my story, to my puzzle. So with that being said, I just want to encourage someone today to take a leap of faith on yourself and let go of something that you've been holding on to, and forgive yourself if necessary. Forgive someone and free up that space. Free up that space that you've been holding on to. You've been holding on, not wanting to forgive something or someone, so that you can be that much more liberated, so that you can in turn be in a position to move closer to being your best self and reaching your full potential. Again, like I said, sometimes, a lot of times, it's a process, but sometimes, you know, we have the authority and we have the power to make radical changes immediately. Like, we have that authority over our lives. We can make that choice. It's just a matter of being intentional and wanting to make the choice. So I just wanted to share that, guys, with you today. I hope this message reaches someone who it needs to reach. I hope everyone is well. And as always, I'll talk to you guys very soon.